Before we introduce ourselves a little bit more, I just want to tell you what we are here to share with you this afternoon. So as Marissa said, we have about 2 hours of your time. And what we're hoping to do is really just review with you some of the different types of supportive relationships. You're all working in some capacity with the young people in your programs. So we want to get you to start thinking about what different types of relationships look like and what the current state of your relationships with the young people that you interact with are. We're going to explore some of the dynamics of different relationship styles and talk a lot about how to set appropriate boundaries. Ben here, my partner in crime, is the king of games and activities, so we're going to have some interactive things for you to do as small groups as well to get you to start practicing some of the skills and some of the components that you heard about in the presentations this morning. We're going to talk about different approaches to building positive relationships. You heard in the introduction that both Ben and I work from a strength-based framework. I heard that a lot in the presentations this morning as well. So we'll pick up on where your morning presenters left off and start again building some of those practices and those skills here this afternoon in small groups. And then we'll end on talking a little bit more about how to engage harder to reach young people. We all know that there are young people who need a little bit more of our care and attention to get their buy-in, to get them on board, to get them participating proactively and appropriately in the activities that you have set up. So we'll talk a little bit about what some of their specific needs are and some of the tactics and the strategies that you can use to engage them in helpful ways. All right, so that's what we have planned for you.
Now, I'm a firm believer that post-lunch is the best time possible for speaking and learning, so I'm excited for this afternoon. What I've done in the event, at any possibility that you get a little bored, I hope it doesn't happen, but if it does, I put some stuff on every table. There's stuffed animals, there's things to grab, there's things that you can build and be creative. Keep yourselves entertained. I know for myself, if I've got something in my hands, I can often listen better on a long day. So I hope that that'll help you to kind of build through the day with us. I also want to highlight my favorite toy that's on a table. If anyone else wants to steal it from that table, you may. But if you could demonstrate here, it's this animal noise gun. It makes 5 different distinct sounds. Yeah. Can you go to the howl there?
The howl is
Yeah. There's like there's a wolf. Go for the wolf. Nice, nice. I think the batteries are getting a bit quieter as it goes. Nice pirate patch there, sir. But my son helped me pick them out. We got 2 so that we could ambush his baby sister with roaring bear sounds. She was, I think, 6 months at the time. He's like, she's going to love it. So she did. It's a pleasure to be with you today. We look forward to spending some time trying to give you space now to start to work through some of the principles that you've been hearing in the morning and some of the things that we're going to present. Before we jump in, I'll just introduce a little more, tell you a bit more about who we are, and we'll get to know you throughout the day. So Melanie Bania, I'm excited that you get to spend 2 hours with Mel. She's great. Mel is a consultant who does lots of work around youth mentoring. She's a PhD in criminology. She's been involved in developing the provincial mentoring framework for Ontario and works as an evaluator, strategic planner, and just does everything really well. So it's a pleasure to work with Mel. And if you have questions about any of the material that we covered today, you can talk to Mel because she's awesome. And she probably has lots of resources that would help to supplement the material for the day.
Yeah, and Ben here, we like each other, right? So I'm going to now tell you about how cool Ben is. So Ben and I actually met in school. So he also has a PhD in criminology, and he's currently the coordinator of the victimology program at Algonquin College. So he has a set of students every year that are lucky enough to be in his classes and to participate in that program with him. He also wears different hats. My key partner in crime, as I mentioned, on the Youth Now Collaborative, but he's also a member of the Board of Directors of Crime Prevention Ottawa. He's Vice President of Youth Now Canada. So Ben's really actively engaged in all and everything that has to do about strength-based approaches with young people. So also a great resource. We have our contact information for you at the end of the presentation. So also an awesome person to talk to if you have further questions about what we're presenting today.
Great, thanks, Mel. Wow, nice. All right. Over to you for...
Okay, so we're actually going to start with an activity to get your brains kind of thinking a little bit and get you working on some sticky notes here that I've shared on your tables. Feel free to separate the pads if you need to separate the pads. Everybody needs a set of like, I don't know, 5 to 8 or so sticky notes that they're going to work on individually. So start bartering and bargaining with your table mates. If you need more, we can definitely give you some more. What I would like for you to do, I know we have a mix here this afternoon of people who are working, frontline with the young people in the homework club, and then we have some managers who are taking away some of these lessons and some of these activities to take back to their staff teams. But right now, I want you to put yourself in the shoes of that frontline staff person in your program and what that looks like in your shift. I'm not sure if you have a daily shift, a weekly shift, whatever that looks like. What do you do when you get to work? What are sort of the step-by-step activities? What are the step-by-step things that happen in your program? So you get to work and then what happens? Maybe you set the agenda, greet the kids, get the kids set up, tutor, help the kids. So all of those activities, all of those different kind of key things that you do, I want you to write one down per Post-it, okay? And then just kind of put them, spread them in front of you, and we'll hold on to them and we'll revisit them in a little bit. But for now, I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to write down one activity per Post-it, components that you do in your work. Are there any questions? All right, go for it. Was that hard, or were you like, this is what I do, ... Yeah? Yeah. All right. Okay, so hold on to that. We're going to come back to it because I wanted you to think through a little bit what your interactions and what your focus is placed on in your kind of everyday work. Before we make use of this important information that you've put down on your sticky notes, I want to just sort of share with you some of what we know about the different styles and the different types of relationships that are out there when we talk about adults who are in a position of supporting young people. So how many of you in this room at this moment, if I ask you to raise your hand, would say that you consider yourself to be a mentor? Okay, quite a few hands. So there are different definitions of what a mentor looks like, right? But essentially, every opportunity that we have to interact with a young person is an opportunity to be a mentor. A mentor is somebody that we think of as a role model, somebody that can impart some experiences, some wisdom, somebody that can guide us, somebody that can support us. So I'm happy to see that there are so many hands that were raised in the room because, unfortunately, when we hear the word mentors, sometimes we tend to think about a mentoring relationship. Some people, when they hear the word mentor, they think about programs like Big Brothers Big Sisters of Canada or coaches or somebody who has a long-term intense relationship with the young people in their lives, right? But the truth is that there are mentoring moments that each of us have where even though we may not know these young people well, or we wouldn't consider ourselves consistent or a very sort of often present person in their life, we do, through our interactions with them, have the opportunity to embrace those moments as mentoring moments, right? So again, through the show of hands, I see that you are already kind of in that space, hopefully, where that is your thinking. Different relationship focuses, they tend to be categorized into two separate categories. There are relationships that have a developmental focus, and there are relationships that have an instrumental focus. An adult to young person relationship that is developmentally focused simply means that the emphasis is placed first on building a connection, building a bond with you, building that trust, building that respect. A relationship that is instrumental means that the focus, first and foremost, is placed on helping you develop skills, tactical stuff, skill building, tutoring, where the connection may take a little bit more of a back seat or may take a longer time to develop because you're really focusing in on a specific sort of skill set that you're trying to inspire or support. And so with those different focuses, there are different styles of relationship. And so I want us to think about these two styles of relationship today as we go through our workshop. The first style is considered assistance, okay? So where an older person, an adult, supports a younger person mostly through assistance. So akin to the instrumental kind of focus I just talked about, this is providing supports in academics, providing supports in leadership skill development, providing supports in conflict resolution, maybe doing some minor sort of self-esteem, self-confidence support. Transformational relationships, on the other hand, are really meant to affect a deeper level of change and a deeper level of transformation in the young person's life. So it is much more focused on expressing deep levels of understanding, sympathy, compassion, nurturing, and support on an emotional level, on a social level, okay? Now, you're going to say, why are these two things separated, right? Because although they're presented as two different dichotomies, two ends of a spectrum, they are on a continuum and they do interact. So you do have relationships that are assistance-based, but that can be transformational. And you do have relationships that are transformational and can also be assistance in the sense of building skills, tutoring, helping with academics and different competencies. So we're going to talk a little about later on how you engage some of the harder to reach young people in your programs, okay? Those young people who have a lot going on in their little lives, who have many different dynamics, whether that's at home, in their community, in their family, that causes a lot of stress and puts a lot of pressure on their everyday interactions, okay? And what research tells us is that for those young people, this transformational relationship style is really key. And so although you may be able to provide some assistance, focusing on those strategies to be a transformational support in their life is very important, okay? So we'll come back to that. That's going to be a bit of a thread that's woven through our whole discussion today. For now, what I would like for you to do is go back to the sticky notes that you have in front of you, the things that you put down as the key activities, the key parts of your job. And I'm going to move this board a little bit closer up here to the center of the room. And I would like for you to get up, try not to trample anyone. It's a small-ish space, but I would like for you to look at each of your sticky points and to think about whether they fall in the assistance category or the transformational category based on what the focus of that activity is. And if there are activities, if there are things that you do in your work that you can't really put in either one of these boxes, I want you to just place them below, okay? So we have a lot of people, a lot of stickies. It's okay if some of the stickies are overlapping or on top of each other, but I want us to try and separate and think through whether what we do focuses on assisting young people in a tactical way or building that connection, that transformational relationship, and then anything else can go on the bottom, okay? Great. So I'll invite you to just kind of take some time, stroll up here, think through your stickies. This board, folks, is a thing of beauty. Look at that. Look at all the work you do. That's incredible. Okay. So interesting, very interesting, right? Let's just see some of the things that are written down here. So in the assistance category, we have help with homework, tell them about the program and kind of planning ahead what's to expect, the next steps. Write an agenda for the day on the whiteboard, prepare supplies, get a tutor to help, say goodbye, welcome, say hi, prep food, prepare and distribute snacks, okay? And then in the transformational part, we have check in with them on a one-on-one, right? So have that conversation. How are you doing today? Have a conversation during mealtime, walking home, okay? Another opportunity to have that connection. Walking to the school bus to pick them up and to bring them back, another opportunity, right? Mediation with different young people when something occurs, absolutely. Activity and discussion, free play, greeting them, checking in. So this is all the relational stuff, right? Those are all those relational components. I'm interested at what's in the neutral zone here. So set up, putting things together, washing dishes, right? All those things that take up some of your time, but that aren't necessarily a part of that contribution that you're making directly, but are an important part of your program. Did anybody feel like they had way more stuff to put on the assistance column than in the transformational column? Yeah, a few heads, yeah, lots of stuff to go in assistance. Did anybody feel like they had a pretty good split between the two? Yeah, I see a lot more heads, so people felt like there were things to put in both. Did anybody feel like what they did overwhelmingly fell in this gray zone of logistics? Okay, so that's good. Your managers may feel more like this, but it's good that you, for the most part, don't. So great. So I think what we're here today to talk about is not that one of these approaches or styles is more important than the other, right? All of these components are what make your program what they are. But I think the important thing to remember is, are you reaching that balance? Is there a balance in your interactions and in the time that you spend? And also, if you remember to a few minutes ago, I mentioned that for harder to reach kids, for those young people who have a lot of stress in their life and who may have experienced trauma and who therefore may have a harder time being able to build that trust and that respect, that mutual respect, they may need a lot more of this from you than you realize. They may need for you to spend a lot more time in this category with them than in this category. Okay, so that's just something I want you to think about and how you can think that through in the next activities that we're going to do together.
Great, thanks,
all right.
Mal. Roll this way. Wow, it feels like a little variety show right now. Da, 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 da. All right. So the next thing that we want to check in on is I want to ask you, do you ever have days where you go to work and you're there to meet with your kids and you're not feeling especially fresh? Anyone? For me, I call it the Februaries. In February, I know as a college professor, I have one group of students every year, and the beginning of the year is really exciting, and then we get into the winter, and I notice that my patience starts to shrink a little with assignments and not understanding, and is it in the outline, and we start to move towards February, and I recognize that I get the Februaries, and I have to stop and think about the way that I'm responding when the pressure's on and my patience is low, and so I've had to put some work into reflecting on why that happens and how I can get through it in a way that's going to maximize what I can offer to other people. So one more show of hands if you can think about a time in the past year where you knew that your patience was low, and you might have, it didn't have to be February, maybe you got the Marches, but anyone identify with that? All right, good. So one of the key pieces that we're going to talk about in terms of maintaining your own wellness to be able to help other people is boundaries. How many of you have had good conversations about boundaries in the past? Yes, all right, beautiful. Well, we're going to do it again because it's so important. And it's something that we need to work on and remind ourselves and reflect constantly on our boundaries, because we all have times where we set boundaries. We're setting boundaries constantly in the work that we do. What's appropriate? What am I going to respond to? What am I not going to respond to? And there's times when we set boundaries that are too lenient, and there's times when we set boundaries that are too rigid. And so it's important that we take time to reflect on our boundary setting practices and how it results in the best outcomes for kids and for ourselves, okay? So boundaries can be very diverse in our lives. We have emotional boundaries, we have time boundaries, we have boundaries in terms of what types of behaviors we're comfortable with and what makes us uncomfortable. We have boundaries about our work-life balance, and there's so many, and that's kind of categories. And then when it comes to the actual work that you do, there's all kinds of other boundaries. So for yourself, if you think about boundaries in your work role with the program that you're working in, what are some of the boundaries that you find it challenging to work through or to respect or to set or enforce? What are some of those more challenging boundaries?
Having youth understand that I don't work on the weekends.
Okay, ooh, that's a good one. And because that was the first contribution here, I've got for your beautiful effort and courage. Well done. Thank you, thank you. If at any point anyone in the room would like to acknowledge someone else's bravery or courage, you're welcome to borrow the trophy and pass it on. They're not stealing it from you per se. We're just all brave and courageous here. Okay, so recognizing that that you don't work on the weekend. How many of you have a similar boundary issue with just that you need to communicate about your working hours and when you're not working? That's something that happens? Okay. And do you ever experience kids pushing on that boundary or trying to get your time outside of that? Yeah? Okay. All right, good. What's another boundary? We'll come back to that, but what's another boundary that's challenging? Yeah?
Our program is inside a shelter.
Okay.
So they have a strong relationship outside of our program.
Right.
So they have, their little games sometimes, their little own group, and
Okay.
sometimes it's hard to delimit what's appropriate for that group and everything. So, or they exclude some children. So we are constantly reminding them of boundaries like social and all sorts of stuff, and also trying to get them to interact at all, because it becomes very community,
Mm-hmm.
One live in front of the other apartment and stuff like that.
Right.
And so I find that with regards to the social boundaries, that would be the most within themselves.
Yeah, so you're navigating other people's sets of boundaries about who they feel comfortable with, who they don't feel comfortable with, who's in their group, who's not in their group, and how we create a safe space that includes people, right? That's one. What's another type of boundary? Yeah?
Personal information.
Ooh, good.
So we're in a small town, so everyone knows everyone's aunts and uncles, brothers and sisters, mom's name, that sort of stuff. Or if I was down at the local restaurant having a beer on the weekend, I'll say, oh, it's a big deal, Carly was having a beer this weekend. We just don't really get it. So just having them aware of your personal life.
Right. So the blurring of that professional role, and whenever you're in this type of work, we don't want somebody to think, oh, I'm dealing with a professional today, and they're being professional towards me. You want that meaningful connection where it's like, your name is Carly? Yeah. Where somebody feels like, Carly cares about me, right? That's what we want, because that's in that transformational category. And so sometimes, because we're motivated to have that connection, sometimes we'll overstep into a number of different areas that cause us either to feel like our personal safety or well-being, or it can be compromised, and sometimes we can overstep into the privacy and boundaries of kids that we're supporting and working with, right?
This one might sound a little silly, but in the setting that we're at, I'm also at the shelter with Juliana. Sometimes literally your food, you make snack for the youth, but if you leave your food out, they'll just take your cookies or your donuts. Obviously you don't really care, but sometimes you have to be like, hey, I wanted that cookie, So,
Yeah.
you have to set that boundary. That's my cookie.
Right, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So what are the expectations around things that belong to people, right? That's important. I'm just going to say this because she said that could be silly, so thank you for the courage to share your thought process honestly, anything else that people were thinking? Yeah?
Social media, the kids sometimes don't understand that, no, I'm
Anyone else identify with social media? They want to be social media buddies? Okay, all right. And you use social media, yeah, so it's like, join my page, right? And so there, how the balance of like, well, we want to connect with you through social media, but when you start posting all of those things, maybe that's not the best use of social media in our case, right? Anything else to flag? Yes.
I run the homework. The homework I run is my neighborhood.
Yes.
Exactly the building I live. It's my manager. So because I live in the building, and also I coordinate the homework club, it's a little bit challenging. Sometimes the students, they come see me in the lobby when I'm waiting the bus for my daughter. I say, oh, Zina, we're looking for that. Can you get something from the homework? I said, this is not the time to homework club.
Yeah, that's good. So you're enforcing that. So she's saying she's living in the space where this program happens. And so when people see her, she's the homework club. So if they need something, then it's fair game, right? So that's good.
I say, oh, okay, later when we see the homework club, why don't you do that? Because it's our building. I say, yeah, I know, but I'm not working right now.
Right, yeah, that's good. That's a really good boundary setting example. Anyone else have experience with a live-in position? Any sort of living in or work where you're living in close proximity? Yeah?
Yeah, like I just moved out recently, which has been great. But because I used to live in the neighborhood where I work,
Yeah.
my family still lives there. And then like as soon as I leave my house, like, "Con, so what about girls' group? When's the next girls' group?" Like, guys, I told you when the next girls' group is. Or like, I forgot something in the house, can you go grab it? Like, whenever they forget something, because they used to have my cell phone number as well, so they would
Right.
call me and ask if I can go back in like after hours, grab them things, and like, guys, like I'm not working. Like sometimes I can do it, I don't mind, but sometimes I really can't do it.
Right.
And then it gets like too much at one point.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, good. So I'll take a few more, and then we're going to kind of transition into a bit of an activity, and then I'll get you working at your tables. So if there's other thoughts that you still want to bring, you'll get a chance with your group. But yeah.
I'm just going to reiterate the phone issue. I'm always amazed at how resourceful some of our youth are and the parents about finding our personal cell phone number.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll say, like, how did you get this number? And, oh, so-and-so had it, who got it off of so-and-so. And then I'm like, that many people have my cell phone? It's amazing how clever they are about getting things that they really want access to. And I guess it's a lot easier than I thought it was. But those phone calls on like a Saturday night or a Sunday morning around something as small as, oh, I left my bag in the program, can you come get it? It's like, it's 11 o'clock on Saturday.
All right. Yes, yes. This is beautiful. This is the one we're going to pick up on for now. I recognize there's many more that we could explore, but I do this with my students as well at Algonquin. It's a little activity. We're drawing from a technique called Theater of the Oppressed, which is an experience where we're going to do a role play that's open to the group. So I'm going to be, in this case, the oppressor, which is a little extreme for this example. I'm going to be a kid who wants your cell phone number, okay? And I'm going to do everything I can to get it. And I want you to explain to me why I shouldn't have your cell phone number, okay? But I'm not going to accept your explanations. I'm going to push, and I'd like you to try to communicate your boundary to me clearly, okay? And so what'll happen is we'll start somebody, you get the trophy already because I'm going to say somebody who you find, sometimes they just pressure you in just the right way and you give in and then you think, man, I wish I hadn't done that. We'll start with you, and I want to talk with you. When you feel stuck, what'll happen is somebody else can raise their hand and be like, oh, I want to try, and then you can jump into the conversation, and we'll kind of rotate through that way. Does that make sense? So I'll start talking with one person. When you feel like, yeah, I don't know, then somebody else can offer to help, and I'll talk with them, and we'll keep moving. After we've done this, we'll go to your tables, and you can talk through some of your boundary issues that you're working on, okay? So is there somebody who is willing to have a conversation with me about why I can't have your cell phone number? Okay, James. And that's right?
Yeah,
Did I read that? Okay. And what would be the oldest age of a kid that you work with? 18. 18? Oh, perfect. This is great. All right. All right. And what's your job, James?
I don't work frontline right now, but
Okay.
yeah, doing consulting stuff.
Okay, all right. So let's imagine that James is working with youth in a program, and he's got some great transformative relationships that he's cultivating. And so now Ben would like to get James's phone number. James, buddy. I need your cell phone number. There's something I really need to talk to you about on Saturday.
Unfortunately, man, I don't work on Saturdays, and if I gave you my number, I'd probably get fired.
I don't know if that's true. They're pretty nice here. Like, I've had so many chances, and they're really great. And like, you've always been good with me. There's stuff I know I've broken some rules, but you always encourage me and get me back in. And this is really important to me, that I can talk to you on Saturday.
So I won't answer the phone on Saturday, but I'll give you my work number, and you can call me on Monday. And the anticipation that'll build over the weekend of me getting your information then, it's going to make me that much more excited to hear it.
Well, yeah, the thing is, James, I really wanted to talk to you on Saturday because I need a bit of support. There's something that's a bit difficult for me this week. Not that it's hard, it's just we've been talking in the group about taking initiative and leadership, and I've organized something on Saturday, and it's for the community, and I'm just really excited about it, but I know that it's gonna be, like, stuff's gonna come up that I'm gonna have trouble figuring out because I haven't done this before, and I wanna be able to call you to talk it through. Can you help me?
I can help you right now, and you know what else we could do? We could maybe make a plan so that you can call some of your friends on the weekend, and that would really help you have some support over the...
He's doing well, isn't he? Yeah. I won't keep pushing because he's enforcing boundaries really beautifully. What are some of the strategies he's shown in this communication that's been a healthy way of communicating boundaries?
Providing alternatives.
He's providing alternatives that are good. And I can push back on some alternatives, but he's given me options so I can pick the one that's the best fit. Yeah.
He's not really saying no to you. He's not shutting you down.
Yeah.
You don't feel like you're being heard. Yeah, you feel like you're being heard.
Right, so he's still talking to me. He's like, no conversation over. We're still engaging in a conversation. Good, what else? Yeah.
He's being honest. He's like, I'm not answering on Saturday. But
Yeah. And I'm kind of amused in this conversation, so it was matching the tone to be like, and the anticipation can build until Monday when you call me, right? So I like that. I like that kind of, we have relationships where the context drives the way that we frame something and what we say. What else was good about that? Making a plan. Yeah, that's phenomenal. Why don't we use some time now when we are together to talk about what some of the things that could come up that you might have to problem solve. Let's explore that now, yeah.
And also setting boundaries.
Yeah.
I didn't work on Saturdays.
Yeah, I don't work on Saturdays. There's organizational policy, right? He's like, I might get fired. I push back, but I also heard him say, I'm actually not allowed to do that in this role, right? So that's helpful, yeah.
Identifying other people that could help. Yeah. Or like talking about your peers, right?
Yeah, great. So lots of great strategies in there to pull from, okay? What I'd like is for you to take a few minutes at your table to talk through the things that came up when you were talking about boundary setting and share some examples of how you've been able to work through boundaries in a case where you felt like your boundaries were being pressured, okay? So have that conversation. Where's that trophy? I gave it to him already. All right, I'm going to pause you there. All right, let's take this up. What were some of the types, as Mel and I walked around, we noticed that some of the conversations were more, some of the boundary challenges that you continue to experience in your work, and some of them were saying this worked well. So I'm curious, from your conversation then, what were some of the key types of boundaries that you found most important to talk about or that you wanted to talk about? What are some quick examples? Just give us the highlight. Yes?
Mostly outside of work boundaries, talking about work issues.
Okay. So the work outside of work boundary, what else was kind of prevalent in your conversation? Yeah?
Senior staff pushing down on less senior staff. So management telling frontline staff, you can do that. Just going early on Saturday, just skipping on Saturday.
Okay. Right. So almost a structural issue where having looser boundaries was encouraged as a way of showing initiative and leadership and engagement, right? Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
We also talked about how parents can cross a lot of boundaries.
Okay, parents can cross a lot of boundaries, like the parents of the youth that you're working with and kids. Yes, and can push. Certainly when parents care about their children, they can be fierce, right? Absolutely. And sometimes their trust in their children can be a little misguided too. And they're equally as fierce because they don't know the difference. And that's something that we deal with, absolutely. I work in the youth justice system, or that's the background, so we've got lots of really interesting dynamics with parents. What else? It's a good, we've talked about a lot of them. And I think we could probably continue to work through some of more identifying and strategies. I'd encourage you, we decided today that we would send you with homework. So that's one of your pieces of homework. How many of you?
Homework club.
That's right. Which means you just love homework, right? You're like, I love homework so much. I want to work in a program that has homework in the name, right? This is good. All right. So I would like you, please, to just be conscious of your boundary setting and have a chat with the people around you and your team and problem solve together. How would you deal with this so that you don't feel like you're isolated on your own and somebody's pushing it and you feel uncomfortable and like you're giving up ground that you don't want to give up. That's when we start to feel, I said it 3 times, resentment or bitterness towards the clients that we're working with, when we feel like we're giving up parts of ourselves that we're not willing to give, okay?
Kent, do you have
Just one thing with the boundaries, but like, that's almost personal preference. I mean, I work with people, their boundaries are so strict, they won't even put their last name on it, right?
Yeah.
They go as Jim or Joe or Jeff or whatever. Whereas my preference boundary is way beyond that, you know? So I think when you're discussing that, like it's bigger than just, you know, I mean, there's corporate policy, I understand that, but, you know, it's like people's preference in food.
Yeah.
You know, some are very diverse and some just like meat and potatoes.
Yeah. Yeah, our comfort zones look very different, right? Yeah. And although James here was a master, right, at maintaining his boundaries, sometimes we need practice. We're comfortable in defending our boundary in one situation, but maybe less in another, right? So that role play that Ben led you through is something that you can do with your coworkers, with your manager at staff meetings, whatever that looks like, on an ongoing basis so that you can practice your skills in different situations. James?
We talked a little bit about letting go of the ego a little bit, about, you know, where can I really help you on a Saturday at 11 o'clock? And there's probably people better served to do that than me. And let's talk about who those people are and where to access them and what numbers you can call. And I think sometimes that comes from the guilt, right? Like, I think this kid, the only person this person's ever going to connect with is me. And I'm the only person that can help you, so my God, I better answer that phone for them. And I think that's a really slippery slope to get into, because what if you don't answer the phone? Or what if you're not available to do that? And then where have you left that person? And I think that's where we struggle with a lot of our work, because it can be really intensive. And we do run programs on weekends, and we are around, and sometimes getting away is really tough. So we have to have those conversations internally around, like, where can you really do the best help? Is it answering the phone or making sure they have another number to call?
That's beautiful, and it talks about the importance of communities of support as well, rather than seeing yourself as the only resource for somebody. How many of you are familiar with the concept of the drama triangle? Okay.
Victim, hero,
Yeah, and it's sometimes used with different names. So we've got victim, hero, and villain, right? It's what happens when you start to engage in a relationship where you see yourself as the hero coming in to save somebody, and they want to be saved, right? Because what happens is, so long as you're in that saving dynamic and they're being saved, they get used to power working that way. And when you decide that you're not going to be saving, you're going to stop that relationship, they can perceive you as the persecutor, as the villain, the one who's oppressing them, right? And it's this triangle that shifts really quickly. And the kind of key indicator is that belief that I'm the only person who can do this for this person. They rely on me. I have to save them. And I've seen people trapped in some of these relationships. You'll have somebody, a young person who might be experiencing suicidal tendencies. And those are often, mental health can be one of those cases where we feel like there's pressure for me to save this person. I have to help. I have to step outside of this role and step into this role and then that role. And then if you look back, maybe some of the choices that you make weren't the clearest, right? And so to be conscious of whenever you feel that pressure that I'm the one who can do this, sometimes we need to let go of that sense of it's me, and bring it back to a team and say, how do we support this person? How do we move this person forward? So that the one can be a trick there. Yeah, good. I want to kind of wrap up this boundaries chat with just a little bit about work-life balance in general by looking at, for me, I know the Februaries come on me, and I think about what are some of the warning signs that I can start to recognize. So if you think about some of the times in your life when you don't feel your freshest, then what are some of the warning signs that you identify or you think, oh, maybe there's something that's a little off on my balance? What are some of the things that come up for you?
My body starts to feel really like sore.
Yeah, you just feel sore and achy. Yeah, it could be a cold or it could be feeling worn down, right? And sometimes they go together, for sure. Yeah, I'll give you this because you were the first to be like, sometimes I don't feel great in my job and I ache. It hurts my body, right? Who else could recognize some of the things?
I lose patience.
Lose patience. Anyone lost patience before? You lost a little bit of patience? Okay, good. Yeah, I do that. Dehydrated. Good. Drink your water. It'll help you. Yeah. Sometimes you're so busy you forget to drink water, and it's all downhill from there. That's when the aches really set in. Okay. What else? Yeah.
When the kids tell me I rolled out of the wrong side of the bed.
Yeah. When they're honest enough to be like, you're grumpy today, right?
Notice when I'm having a bad day and when I'm having
Yeah.
a bad day. And as soon as like
Good.
I pick up on it, then I pick up on it, and I'm very quick to like apologize to them.
Good. Awesome.
Yeah, they're really intuitive sometimes.
Good. As a married man, I've learned that it's rarely your go-to to be like, you seem a little grumpy. But kids don't have that filter yet, so they'll tell you. They could tell you, right? But the reason why it's so important to have this conversation is some kids will tell you and some won't. And they're looking to you for connection and support, and they'll just feel that that's not available to them, right? So the work that we do has such a beautiful impact on young people's lives. And so when we keep ourselves in that place where we're healthy and we're engaged and we're here to make that difference, it's really the outcome that we experience, right? Let's shift the conversation because we could all think of what some of our warning signs are. It's good to be aware of those. What are some of the things that you personally do for real to help you stay fresh in the work that you do, to help you stay energized and hopeful about the impact that you're going to have? What are some of the things that feed you? Eating, yeah, that helps. And water, too. So food and water, cover your basic. The stuff you need to stay alive is like the bare foundation here, yeah. Vacation, ooh, nice, that's good. Yeah. Cooking, yeah, good, absolutely. That's a favorite of mine. I'll come visit, yeah. She's going to enforce her boundaries right now. She's like, no. You're not welcome, but I like you. Yeah. Exercise, yeah, that's a great one, yeah.
I would say just talking with the team, because sometimes it helps know other people are in the same kind of place.
Yeah, good. Yeah, team support. It's funny how an issue that you feel really frustrated about, that when it goes out there and your team can identify with it, it's normalized a bit and you feel like you've got more hope towards moving forward and some good problem solving and support. What else?
On that, I would say like preaching her and I are very good on this, and sometimes I say, I just need a break and just go to the office and take a good 5 minutes, do something somewhere new and just like, we roll really good on this one and to support each other in the same sense, but taking a break and taking a mental break for yourself before you get snacky, because they are just sometimes just kids being kids and being silly, but if you're not having anything ready, you can go into this.
Good, yeah. So to recognize when you need to step away for a moment and come back refreshed in your perspective. Yeah, we'll just take one or two more and move on. I love it.
So just deciding every day before work that you're going to be in a good mood.
That's great. So fun socks, fun day. If we take one thing away from today, fun socks, fun day. And that deliberate choice that I'm going to go and be in a good mood today. I'm going to make somebody else leave in a good mood because my good mood is just so contagious, and so are my socks. I've got socks for everyone. Not necessarily, but maybe, yeah.
I was going to say, just not being afraid to change the plan. So if it's homework club and it's one of those days, just scrap what your plan was and do something different and just change the routine a little bit for a day or two.
That's good.
Just so whether it's plan some special event or an activity, just get out of the routine a little bit.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, there's more. I'm just going to tell you a couple of mine and we'll move on. For me, I have a baby, so holding her and smelling her head is beautiful. Like, it's just like, I feel so calm. I'm being a dad. Right now I'm doing everything that I need to do as a dad is just holding her, right? She's 1 and she doesn't sleep a lot, so I'm a little loopy in this time of my life. Well, I'm always loopy, but more so. So there's that. I really find that going to a movie and having the bright lights peps me up for 2 or 3 days. Like, I'm just like, wow. And I love every movie I see. It's rare that I come away like, meh. So there's just different things that you'll find personally and that you can recognize that fill your bucket. They put hope back into that bucket that you carry around. And then it's important also to be prepared to know sometimes when you're working with people, there's crises that happen and there's things that really drain you and you put all of your energy into helping somebody and you feel okay in that time and then you come away and you just feel so exhausted and all of that emotional impact sometimes comes a day or 2 later than the actual crisis time when your adrenaline is kicking in and you're dealing with it. So when you have a high crisis scenario that you're dealing with, it's good to anticipate in a day or 2 or tonight when I get home, I'm going to feel low. And to have a plan already to say, I know the things that I need to put into place that are not just the light things that fill me up, but the things that like give some good deep soul nourishment so that I can go back filled with hope and have hope to offer, okay?
And for sure, everyone put on your list when people say, what would you like as a gift? Now you have an answer, happy socks, right? I never know what to say, happy socks.
The final gem I'll give you here before we go is about respecting choices. This comes back to the drama triangle. This is one of the simple things that I've learned in my career that helps me to stay in a better place is that as much as you want to help people, as much as you offer guidance and support, we don't own the choices that other people make, and we don't own the outcomes for them. Right? Sometimes we feel so much pressure for a certain outcome for somebody, but they're the master of their destiny, and we're the coaches along the way and the people who guide and support and cheer. And so we do what we can, and you can be proud and satisfied with what you've done, but we can't own or feel responsible for the decisions that other people make. We help, and that kind of helps to remove some of the weight and burden when you see people making choices that maybe at this time in their life aren't healthy from your perspective, but maybe they're problem solving in a way that's going to develop a lot of strength in the future, okay?
The next, moving on from boundaries, the next thing that we want to touch on are just some approaches, right? Some key foundational approaches to building those healthy and positive relationships. We're fairly certain that you're aware of them already, but once again, we're going to get you to put some of these, this information and some of these skills to good use. So Ben's going to brief us a little bit really quickly on the strength-based approach, which I know you heard lots about this morning, and then we'll go into another activity once we've reviewed some of the material.
Great. So I just want to kind of give a few pictures that can help with kind of applying principles in practice. If we talk about the strength-based approach, the alternative really often would be seen as a deficit-based approach, which is focused on the things that aren't going right. And it's really easy to focus on those things because they're not going right? They naturally take our attention. When there's a problem, when you're frustrated, it's easy to focus on those things. It's part of our human condition. And so when you're working with young people, especially if they've got goals to build skills, sometimes what we can see are what might be lagging or what they might not have, the things that are missing. If we put our time and attention into that area, it's almost like this hole, the deficit hole, and we're trying to pick up some dirt and put it in the deficit hole to try and gain some ground there. When the strength-based approach recognizes through research that often a more effective approach is to recognize the strengths that someone already has, because we all have deficits. Does anyone else have deficits in this room? Hello, right? Yeah. And I've had them my whole life, and I anticipate that some of my deficits will continue, and some will change, some will be transformative, but there's probably things that when I'm 70 or 75 and being like, hey, that I'll think, I've got some deficits. Sure. So what we want to focus on are what are the strengths that I see? And if I can build on those strengths with a youth, those strengths can become so much more significant in their life that they overshadow some of the deficits. I'm not good at math. and I have a PhD in criminology, right? I literally opened my prospectus for university and I'm like, what doesn't need any math at all, right? and that helped me. There were 2 programs that I could apply for, and one of them was the perfect fit. So sometimes the deficits as someone moves through their life become less significant, and if we take the time to build on the strengths that someone has, that's going to take them a lot further, and it overshadows those deficits. That's part of the logic behind it here. And then I know some of the conversation earlier today as well was really good at this. So a strength-based approach, while it recognizes strengths and the value of strengths and how to leverage them, it has a few components. One is ensuring that people are safe and secure. One of the things with kids is making sure that they have food, because we covered if you're not fed with water and if you're not fed with food, you get grumpy, right? We talked about that. So it's the same with kids. You can't learn if they don't have food. So make sure the basic necessities are covered. We think about the environment that we create. Somebody earlier was saying to Mel that we don't need to sabotage our own programs. Thank you for that, because the kids can do that just fine on their own. That was a beautiful gem, right? So we want to make sure that the environment that we have set up for kids to come into is an environment that's going to foster their success, and that we try to get rid of the barriers and things that might make that environment more difficult for them. It's an environment that's focused on them and achieving their goals, okay? Sometimes one of the first things to ask yourself when something's not going well, rather than what is the kid doing, is what's the environment that I've created? What does our environment look like? In residential programming with youth, this is something that we ask ourselves all the time. If we've got youth in custody or in a residential program, you know, we have a lot of power to set the way that the program works, and there's so many different points of possibility for power struggles that come up when you've got a really well-developed program. And so to ask yourself constantly, for each kid, what's the environment that we've created for this kid? Is it the most conducive to success? And then finally, in the middle, it's that therapeutic or transformational relationship, and they all work together to reinforce a strength-based approach. All right. So what are some of the strengths that you see with the young people that you support? If you need to like flap your arms and move your elbows, I'm seeing some tired eyes coming in now if you need to howl with the animal gun. Sorry. We're going to get you talking again at your tables in just a second, but what are some of the really easy and obvious strengths that you see with young people that you support and work with? Resiliency, absolutely. They get knocked down, they just keep trucking. Yeah. Yeah, good. Determination. I love it. Yes. What else?
Curiosity.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yes. Excellent. Imagination. Good.
Helping at home, like helping at home.
Great. Yeah, helping at home. Yes.
They're very creative.
Yeah.
Poetry, singing, arts.
Nice. Creativity. Good. Yeah. Humor. Absolutely. That's a great strength. Yeah. Yeah, beautiful.
Everyone brings a little bit of a different spice to the program.
Yeah, and some people actually bring spices with them, right? In their lunch. That's good. Those are good people to have around too. I'll yeah. Yeah, sometimes just exceptional confidence beyond their years, right? And sometimes that confidence is very helpful to your program, and sometimes it can be a little disruptive, but it's there nonetheless, right? And that's amazing. Good. So I think it's easy to recognize some of the strengths that we appreciate and value in the people that we support. What I want to look at are what are some of the hidden strengths or the strengths that might be in the wrong context. In other talks I've done, I share a picture that my son drew on his bed sheet. As an example of the right strength is creativity, but it's not in the right place, right? So the big issue for us isn't don't draw on your bed sheets, and it's wrong that you're drawing pictures like that. It's just like, how do we move this to the right place, and you can help us wash your sheets, right? So it's kind of the accountability with redirecting that existing strength. Yeah. Pardon? Oh yeah, manipulative.
Knowing how to get what they want.
Yes. Yeah. Perfect. Now this is the door that I want to open here. Like, ooh, they can be manipulative, but really, a kid who's learning how to pull the right levers to get the outcome. It's like this, life is this beautiful social experiment where they're like, if I pull on this string, what's going to happen, right? And like, what if I pull on all of these ones, right? You're like, ah. So sometimes it can be overwhelming. But what I want to do now is to give you the floor again to talk as a group. I'd like you to think about a client or a young person who you're serving who you find it really challenging to support. They're one of the kids who you put your mind and your thought into it, and somehow they just know how to poke the buttons, right? Or they're pulling on all those strings at the same time, all right? I'd like you to think about a specific young person who you have found it challenging to support, and then I want you to narrow it down to one particular moment that was like the fork being twisted in your side, okay? Just think about what was that moment that really frustrated me, okay? And then I want you to think about what were 3 of those strengths that the young person was using, like maybe we would call it manipulation, but for them, navigating complex parts of their lives, they're trying to get what they need, right? So identify what are 3 strengths that you have seen with a young person that have either rubbed you the wrong way or it's been in a time where it was frustrating to you. Is that clear? Okay. I want you to identify that and take some time at your table to reframe what are the strengths that they're using and talk through some examples with the people around you. Okay? Okay, we're going to bring it back in. I just wanted, before Mel debriefs this activity, to highlight some of the beautiful structures that I've seen built with your... Nice. There's some good ones there, eh? Which, again, I'm not offended if you're bored, but I hope that you'll take something away today. Play, play, play as we learn. Okay? Over to Mel.
All right. So, do you want to just share some of the hidden strengths, some of those really awesome qualities or competencies that showed up at times where you were ready to just pull your hair out? What were some of those hidden strengths that the youth were displaying? Yes? Athletic ability. Energy. Right? Okay. Yes? Determination, persistence. Maya, great, great. Yeah.
Just at the example that we were talking about, this little individual's a good storyteller.
Oh, good storyteller.
Becoming a storyteller.
Yeah, for sure. Orator. Okay, yes, Carly?
One time we tried to administer a timeout, and he managed to get on the computer and print out the UN Declaration of Human Rights, and told us every single way that we were violating his human rights by trying to give him a timeout.
That's amazing.
Resourceful is what I like to say.
That is amazing. Wow.
Like rights-minded, that's beautiful.
Yeah, there's so much in that little nugget. Okay, so rights-minded, right, is aware of rights. That's really great. Resourceful, right? Technically inclined, was able to research-minded, right? There's a lot in that. There's a lot in that nugget. Okay. Okay, I'll come back, sorry.
Self-confidence.
Self-confidence, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Leadership. Yeah, some of them are great leaders, aren't they? In the back of the room? Yes. Loyal. Loyal and protective. Wow, do we ever see that a lot, eh? It's great strength. Yes.
I was saying in control.
In control?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they want to be in control of the environment or the situation.
Okay, yeah. Any others that come to mind? Oh, yes, sorry.
That they have like survival skills, like to protect themselves against situations that they don't know. So
Yes.
very introspective on what bothers them.
Okay, so introspective, self-awareness, maybe, yeah. Any others that came out? James?
Just an awareness of norms. Like they know what you want to hear, and sometimes they'll play to that, right? So I'm going to tell you exactly what I know you're expecting from me. I'm not going to respond later, but I'm going to make sure you know that I know what you like and want to hear from me.
Absolutely, yeah. So they've internalized it somewhere, even if they're not practicing it. Yeah, they have the information, yeah. Okay, any others that you think of that came up in the scenarios or in the stories that you were telling? Okay. I'm not sure if you described simply the activity or the situation. Did any of you go into talking about how you might reframe that, how you might channel that strength to reframe the situation or to put that strength to better use or to more productive use? Did anybody talk? Well, let's take the opportunity then. Ben?
All right. That's great. I like how once you start to talk and see those strengths in the situation, something that might have been really frustrating actually brings out a bit of a smirk or a smile. The same thing can actually happen in the moment that it's happening, where you recognize, oh, look at this determination, or like, oh, look at how this leadership is influencing all of these peers right now, right?
Nicole's like, no way, that will never happen. It can. That's the next section.
Yeah. I find that being open with a sense of wonder at the skills that people can pull out of their hat is a great approach to dealing with things that you might have previously framed through a disciplinary framework, where it's like these are standards for behavior that are not being met. Well, if I look at that differently and say these are strengths that aren't maybe being applied in the right way, or they could be reframed, what are the strengths that I'm seeing? It's going to lead to a different outcome that's going to be more in line with the goals that you have, okay? And the goals that the young person has. And looking at this list, sidebar, I love the feel, if you ever do this with flip charts. Oh, it's nice. A new flip chart pad, just running your hand down it is so nice. Okay, moving on. Right? It's true. You could try it on this one after. Some people have tried before in workshops. They're like, meh. Like, I'm easily impressed is the reality. When you think about some of the environments that develop this skill set, these are necessary skills for some kids. Some kids need to be fighters. Some kids need to be self-advocates to maintain their safety and wellness in life. Because we live in a world that is unfair, that is unequal, and people are constantly dealing with inequality in their lives, even when they're little. And so you may be treating somebody fairly, but from the fact that they live in a society that is not always fair, they've learned some of those tools to fight back, right? And sometimes you're going to receive those instead of the inequality that has birthed them. But they're important skills for that young person to make it, right? And so we don't want to be quashing skills that are going to be necessary for somebody to be healthy in life and adjust in a society that's not always fair. We want people who can stand up and change environments and change things to make them fair, right? And so just to recognize Sally Bay, who talks a lot about strengths, he says one of the strengths that we often miss is resistance to oppression. When people say, right now my interests aren't being acted on, and I'm going to stand up and say something, right? And sometimes we are the oppressor. Sometimes we've done something that, yeah, maybe it's not the best interest of the child, because we're focused on the rest of the group, and maybe it hurt them or their feelings, and they say something or they get upset. Well, if we can take that consciousness that sometimes kids will fight oppression, that's a strength, right? Sometimes they fight against us, and sometimes we don't want that, and that's not good. And sometimes if you think about it, the choice that I just made, it's good for somebody to stand up and to give feedback. We all have times where we need to say to somebody, you know what, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I approached it that way. And those can be those transformative moments for kids, all right? So what we'll do is look at this SAFE model, which is a way of applying the strength-based framework. And we're going to invite you to look at one of the examples that you already talked about at your table. And this is a simple model for reframing strengths. So creating, again, thinking about that sense of safety through the environment and relationship, which we looked at, that big diagram. So thinking through what's the environment that I'm creating. Am I approaching this through a transformative relationship framework, okay? Acknowledging the strengths that you see, that's that moment of like, this is leadership, right? And being able to communicate that to a young person. You know, we've had interventions in youth custody where we've talked about leadership with somebody who was creating an unsafe environment. And they're like, I am a leader, right? And then they chose to apply that strength into making sure that everyone in the house respected safety, right? And sometimes being able to call out and identify those things, reframe and reshape the way that people use their strengths, okay? Facilitated conversation. Sometimes these are fast and sometimes they're short. They're longer. But Facilitation are the skills where we help a process to happen, but somebody else is generating the content, right? We want people to be able to express to us what's happening. Now, the way that younger kids express might be different than the way that older kids express things, but when we can create that safety to really acknowledge, you know, there's strengths here. What's going on for you? What are you trying to get right now? And then to encourage somebody about how you see those strengths taking shape in their life and the potential of those strengths to influence the future. Every interaction that we have, especially if there's a behavior that we need to address, we want to encourage somebody. We don't want to leave them feeling disempowered. We want to say, you know what, even though this didn't go well, here's some of the strengths that I see in you that are going to help you in the future. You're already succeeding in these areas. You can build on those, all right? So using this as a guide, I'd like you to pick one of the conversations you had about those hidden strengths and talk through as a group how you might apply that in your setting to reframe those hidden strengths into a more positive relationship building approach, okay? You have about 5 minutes to chat that through.
All right, we are going to just share with you one last kind of food for thought topic, okay? It's been a long day. You've been bombarded with information. You've been asked to do all kinds of things. But we do want to just tie it together in a nice little bow with the idea of a growth mindset and embracing a growth mindset, okay? We've talked about setting boundaries, making sure you're safe, making sure the young people in the room are safe. We've talked about focusing on strengths, right, as a way to build that positive relationship. We want to close with this idea of the growth mindset, which, to be honest, is something that we're going to encourage you not just to facilitate in the young people that you're working with, but to also keep striving for yourself, right? And we've seen it today. You all shared some great stories of how you reflect often on what it is that you're doing. You guys know your triggers, you guys know your warning signs for when you're getting tired. You're embracing different challenging situations and you're finding a way to push forward. It was funny because when we talked about strengths and we were like, okay, these are the hidden strengths. These are, even when the young people are pushing our buttons, these are the things that they do and they do well and that they have a good handle on. And Ben said, well, you can have that like, oh yeah, they're doing that so well, even in the moment when it's happening. And Nicole was like, no, not gonna happen, never gonna happen, not gonna happen. The growth mindset tells us that it can, right? We, as adults in particular, have certain habits, have certain patterns of thinking, have certain behaviors that are just part now of who we are. And the older you are, the more you get set in your ways and set in those habits. Young people, on the other hand, are just discovering those patterns for themselves, right? Their brains are just beginning to have their own patterns. So I want to share with you just a really quick video that kind of frames for us what having a growth mindset is all about and the reason to embrace the growth mindset, not just for yourself, but to also be able to share it with the young people that you are supporting.
Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood, that it was hardwired and fixed by the time we became adults. But recent advances in only the last decade now tell us that this is simply not true. The brain can and does change throughout our lives. It is adaptable, like plastic. Hence, neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. How does neuroplasticity work? If you think of your brain as a dynamic, connected power grid, there are billions of pathways or roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. Some of these roads are well-travelled. These are our habits, our established ways of thinking, feeling, and doing. Every time we think in a certain way, practice a particular task, or feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road. It becomes easier for our brains to travel this pathway. Say we think about something differently, learn a new task, or choose a different emotion. we start carving out a new road. If we keep travelling that road, our brains begin to use this pathway more, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The old pathway gets used less and weakens. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is that we all have the ability to learn and change by rewiring our brains. If you have ever changed a bad habit or thought about something differently, you have carved a new pathway in your brain and experienced neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated and directed attention towards your desired change, you can rewire your brain.
Now I kind of wish I had an accent because that sounds so much better. So just a quick video to remind us that we see ourselves sometimes, right, as so set in our patterns, but we do have the ability to grow, and we constantly have the ability to reframe how we deal with the young people that we deal with, and to constantly work on our own skills, our own abilities, and to share that message with them. Make sure young people know that. We heard as one of their strengths curiosity, resourcefulness. We have to consistently remind them that just because they have one really good carved out pathway in their brain and they're used to using it, there are other options that they can work on. And it's important for them to know that, right? So it's a good, interesting kind of science-based thing that kids embrace, and that's good to remind them of. There's actually an online toolkit called at growthmindset.org. It's called the Growth Mindset Kit, so look it up. There's some really interesting tools there for teachers, for tutors, for mentors, and there's tons of kind of growth mindset type activities and strategies that you can use for yourself and also in your interactions with young people. I think we've done a lot of utilizing a growth mindset today, talking about the things that challenge us, thinking about ways to approach them differently the next time around, normalizing the struggle, right? Normalizing that these are things that are difficult for all of us. We can do that with the kids that we serve as well. We can share with them and normalize how tough things can be sometimes, and then challenge them and encourage them to start seeing those situations and those challenges in a different light. So that's really just kind of the basic message, but it's a useful tool for ourselves and for the young people to constantly remind ourselves this is an opportunity to grow. Some of the specific strategies that the growth mindset sort of encourages is, do you have kids in your programs that, so we're all kind of familiar, and the kids that stand out who are high energy, who are often the ones who command and demand our attention for whatever reason, right? Those kids are often the ones that are fairly visible in the room and that do kind of get a lot of our time and attention. And then there are young people who maybe really just don't believe in themselves. They don't have that self-confidence, right? They're the more shy, the more timid, the more reserved young person. And they may not have that belief in themselves yet that they can grow. I heard Ben say, I'm bad at math, right? I would encourage Ben to use a growth mindset and think, you're bad at math, you can't do math yet. But just because you're pushing 40 doesn't mean you can't still learn math. Sorry, a little jab there. I'm actually older than he is, so I shouldn't say that. Right, so to embrace, I can't do it yet. If you have those young people in your groups who are constantly negative self-talking, I can't do it, I don't like it, I'm not good at this, I won't do it. That word yet can be really powerful. You can add that at the end of any sentence for that negative self-talk, and it can really reframe it really quickly for them. Yeah, it's true. You might be struggling with this today, but you're just not good at it yet, right? So it's a powerful word in the growth mindset philosophy that you can maybe try and see if it works. Try and see if you can use it. All right, so you're feeling low energy. I had a brownie at the break, so I'm just like starting to feel good again. But it is almost 3 o'clock. So we just want to kind of wrap things up a little bit with talking about the importance of thinking through for those harder to reach kids, for those kids who may cause some disruption, who may have a lot of stress going on in their life, or who may be more reserved, who may be harder to engage with, who may be shy, who don't want to participate. We want to just remind you that there are clear strategies that you can use that we've shared with you today to perform a little bit more work with them and to embrace this transformative kind of relationship with them. We understand that in your role, you're often in that assistance role, right? But there are opportunities for you to have a more transformational impact when you respect your boundaries, when you respect their boundaries, when you focus on strengths, and when you adopt that growth mindset for yourself and for the young person, okay? Some of the key common roadblocks to engaging the young people who are harder to reach are, and we've already touched on a lot of this, power dynamics, right? We talked about the triangle. We talked about feelings of oppression, feelings of being at the short end of the stick in a power dynamic relationship. Another common roadblock are feelings of non-belonging. I heard the speaker that came before us just before lunch talking about the importance of team spirit and the importance of belonging. You could have an activity meant to inspire team spirit, but that young person that's isolated, either because they isolate themselves or they feel isolated by others, won't necessarily engage either, right, in those group activities that you set up for team spirit. So we'll have a look at some ways of dealing with that. And then there are also so many, unfortunately, kids, based on our national statistics, who are dealing with neglect, abuse, trauma, either in the home, in the family, in the extended family, in their neighborhood, in their community, right? So we always have to approach those young people with that eye on, am I creating that safe emotional and physical environment for them? So some quick tips to end on. We're going to share this presentation with you as well. We'll send it over to Marissa, and Marissa can spread the wealth. Some ways of dealing with power dynamics, we've touched on this a little bit. Ben, if you can go to the next slide, is this idea of collaborative decision making. Okay, we've touched on it. We've talked about ways that you can have conversations, especially we've touched on it in the boundary setting exercise. Essentially, when we're dealing with young people who constantly are in power struggles or in control struggles, right, it's really important to recognize their need for self-determination. They get told every day, all day, what to do and how to do it, right? At home, at school, in their peer groups. You have an opportunity in your relationships with them to embrace a more collaborative style of communication. And what that means is allowing them the space to really have the option and the choice to make some decisions for themselves. And your role is to be there, as Ben mentioned, as a facilitator and to go through that process with them. It takes time. I can imagine that that's probably one of your biggest challenges, right? Is that you have a whole group of kids and they're all demanding your attention in different ways. But if you can carve out that space to have those conversations that are more collaborative, where you're asking the young person, well, what do you think about that? What would you like to do next? What would make you feel better if we do this differently the next time? And giving them some power back. You don't always have to make all of the decisions, right? You don't always have to be the one to fix it. You can ask them for their input, and you should ask them for their input. And then the power dynamic begins to shrink. And you can see that trust and that mutual respect start to grow, okay? So just there'll be some key things that we'll share with you. What do you think you'd like to do about the situation? How would you like for me to help? We're often, as things are happening, we're often thinking for ourselves, oh my gosh, what am I going to do, right? What am I going to do about this? How should I respond? If you're dealing with a young person in a particular situation, if you're asking them to think through for themselves what they would like to see happen next, you can also ask, how can I support you in that, right? You don't have to come up with the fix yourself, because the way that they see you as a support may be entirely different than the way that you're thinking you might need to support them. So it's good to have those conversations and to give them back some of that ownership. Next, please. Addressing feelings of non-belonging. We talked about a lot of acting out can come from that sense of leadership and that sense of strong belonging, right? I belong and I lead this group. And then there are other young people who don't have that sense of belonging, who are more off in the corner doing their own thing. They isolate themselves, or their peers often isolate them. It's great to have activities that can promote a team and a group spirit. However, if you're not yourself facilitating opportunities for equal participation, you're probably just setting up the environment again for them to either get re-victimized, right? Or to re-victimize themselves by following those old patterns of staying apart or of being put apart. So some of the really important things to think about for those kids who maybe are acting out or withdrawing because they don't have that feeling of belonging, that positive, healthy feeling of belonging, is to create that equal opportunity for them to participate, but in a healthy way and in a way that they're comfortable with. There's an app that I use that's called Who's Next, okay? And I don't know, how large are your groups? How many people are in your groups typically?
We have 27.
You have 27, around there, yeah.
7 people session.
70? 70? Wow, wow. So that's hard, right? That's hard. How do you make everyone in a session where there are 70 kids, how do you make all of them feel like they have that space where they belong, right? Yeah, yeah, exactly. So lots of tactics to be thought about. If you have a smaller group, or you're able to break your large group into smaller groups, it's important to create those equal opportunities to participate and to value everybody's participation, right? So if you want to check out an app that can help you do that, young people really get into it. You just plug in all their names and it literally just selects the next person up for you. So if you have exercises where you're calling on your students, you're calling on the young people to give out an answer, or it's, you know, they're taking turns, make it a random thing. Let everybody know they're going to get their turn. Use something engaging like an app, and that way nobody gets left out and everybody has a chance to be valued as a member in a public, you know, in a setting that's in front of everybody, to be valued as a member of that group in a positive way. All right, we touched on this a little bit already, some of the trauma-informed care, right, providing that safe environment. So we've also included a toolkit on trauma-informed practice. You all have backgrounds in varying, you know, child and youth worker or whatnot, so you've probably already had some experience with trauma-informed services, but there are some great tools on there that can help you sharpen your skills and that you can look at. And really, again, it's that idea that for those harder to reach kids, you may have to focus on some of these issues before they can handle their homework, before you can focus on the math or the science or whatever else, right? You have to be able to make sure that they're feeling safe and connected. That's what we had, folks. It was a marathon. It was a marathon.
Good job. If I had trophies for all of you to send you home with, just a big shipment of them, that'd be wonderful. You're all champions.
So we want to thank you so much for your attention. It's Friday afternoon, like of all things. You've spent the whole day here. We've been talking at you for a while. So thank you so much for your participation. Ben does want his fluffy bears and things back because he does use them. But before we turn it over to Marissa, who's just going to have a few closing words. Are there any questions or comments or things that you would like to share with the group following our session? All right. Okay, so we'll share with you the information. Thank you so much for your attention. Have a great weekend.